Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to share this time with you, whether it's your morning or afternoon or evening. We're all here, and that's what counts, right? So, let's talk a little bit about the concept of a cure being a medical event and a miracle. Let's do it this way. A cure is a medical event. A healing is a miracle, and a miracle being a holy event. Okay? I had the pleasure of chatting with, let's say, a new friend, Reverend Kevin Danka, who spoke and shared about some very interesting things in our conversation. And I look forward to, Jillian and I look forward to speaking with him further on some of these aspects. But one of the things he said that I think is really sort of important, more than sort of important, is, there are a lot of wonderful, important, significant people who bring us information from different backgrounds. So Reverend Danka said, when Jesus said, follow me, I am the way, okay? Follow me. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. Because of the language of the time, it was ease and the understanding of the time. Non-duality was not exactly a discussion at that moment. That's part of what Jesus and so many of our great, let's say, influencers throughout time have been sharing with us. I appeared to be the individual I of ego, personality, the self with the lowercase s. So when he said, follow me, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, he was actually telling us to believe in ourselves, in the understanding that we are one with everyone and everything. He was telling us to believe in ourselves. That was the same thing, okay? That was the same thing he knew to be true for himself, okay? And when Kevin wrote down this line, he said, read this as many times as you need to get what was being told, okay? Follow me. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. It's not of any one person or individual as we see it. It's telling us to believe in ourselves, the same thing Jesus and so many of the greats throughout time have known about themselves, okay? There are a lot of insights different people have shared with us, okay? I'm going to just adjust. We are. Okay, we paused for a moment, but now we've returned from our station break. Hello. Friedrich Nietzsche said, well, he spoke about the entire physical or relative realm being composed of one thing, yet acting differently. Again, this is non-duality. What's another word for non-duality? I don't really like the word non-duality because it states it in a sense in a negative by referring to it as non, and then it states the dominant overlying overview principle as duality, which it isn't. So I like the expression of referring to it as singularity. You don't have to negate the term. You don't have to go non-duality. It's simply singularity, which is a nice way of talking about it because it's not as common as using the word, for instance, unity or oneness. We hear those words, they have huge meaning, and yet we hear them so often they sort of roll off of our backs like, water on oil. So Nietzsche said, life is, here, I wrote this down just so I can get the words right. Life is the singularity expressing itself as itself. You are the singularity expressing yourself as yourself. And through our many experiences. Now, what's meant by the many experiences? You could say it's individuations. What's an individuation? Well, you are one. I am one. Other people we know. We are one of many individuations, but we are all of one, just like waves are individuations of the ocean, okay? Rays of light are individuations of the sun. So actually, I believe it was Neil Donald Walsh who said, life is the singularity expressing itself as itself through these experiences of our individuations. You are expressing yourself as the multitudinous individuality, was the way Neil placed it. Here's the thing. Not only are we all, as human beings, connected, everything is connected. And yet, as you will hear me say, nothing is connected because to be connected, there must be two or more, okay? I can connect this bag to this cup because there's two or more. But when we're all one, there's nothing to connect. It's that recognition. So everything is connected. We are all connected as human beings. Everything is connected, and yet everything becomes one, so there's no connection. We may seem to be separate. The illusion of us, the illusion of separation is what allows us to buy into the illusion of being connected. It sort of keeps us just this far from recognizing that we're one. But although we may seem to be separate and limited, finite, that's the illusion, and that illusion is the very thing that allows relativity. All right? So Kevin explains that's the very thing that allows relativity, so that consciousness, source energy, God, we say God, love, infinite or universal intelligence, whatever words you want to use, so that it can better know itself as infinite, as eternal. And Neil goes into a large, his teachings are a large explanation in the understanding of this as well. This comes into play in a lot of different subtleties. Comes into play with a lot of different subtleties, because often we hear people speaking of a battle. We often express things in the terms of battles. The church, for instance, expresses things in the concepts of battles between the forces of light and darkness. It makes darkness seem to be a thing, right? A real thing. You know what? I'm glad that Svalbard mentioned this. There is a poem that Jillian wrote. I wonder, Svalbard, where you got that from, that touches on this very concept. And I'm not sure where we can access this poem. If we post it here, it's a lot to read or to take, but we'll give that some thought, how we can share that with you. Anyway, so we often hear people speaking of the battles between darkness and light, which makes darkness appear to be a thing, a real thing. Now, we do have a sensory experience when we are in the dark. Okay? We do. And Kevin talks about this very lucidly. We have a sensory experience when we are in dark, and we name that experience darkness. It makes it seem as if darkness is something that's present. But as Kevin goes on, he says, if I ask you to describe and define what darkness actually is, you can only describe it by telling me what it is not. Now, this is an important understanding. Let's talk about where it's leading us to. If you're asked to describe what darkness is, think about it. You can't really describe darkness any other way than describing what it isn't. And why is that? Well, you've heard me talk about this for more years than I can count on the fingers of my hands. Because it's the absence of light. You can capture light. You can bend light. You can reflect light. You can't do that with darkness. Because darkness doesn't exist. It is only an absence. It's not actually a thing. Light, on the other hand, Kevin shares, is a very real thing. It's an energy that can be either fully expressed, partially expressed, appearing to be mostly absent. And just like energy, source, love, it can also be fully expressed or only partially expressed or appear to be absent. Yes, remembering to left, we mentioned at the beginning, Reverend Kevin Donka. That is his name. And as we share with him a little more, I'll find out where you can access possibly some of his writings or sharings. Okay? Anyway, or Google up the name, Donka. See what you find. So a lot of the battles that we have inside, when we realize that we're equating them with good or bad, we're equating them with light and darkness. So, if there were two armies, which I don't love that equation anyway, because light isn't an army fighting, there aren't warriors of light. There can't be. Imagine if an army of warriors showed up and on the other side there was no one. Okay? No one was there. One side of an army showed up and on the other side there was no one. Could there be a battle? Not really. Not really. There's no one, there's nothing to fight. And once we move through that, we also begin to realize, light doesn't show up to fight anyone, anything. It's light, it knows there's no battle. It's us. It's us that thinks that these are two forces because we have certain experiences in darkness. So we decide it's real. instead of recognizing that it is an absence. So, where can this recognition come from? Well, what are we doing right now? We're looking at something and we're in observation of it, right? Observation. Observation is a rather interesting word. And yes, Lexi writes, the battle dissolves before it begins. And it isn't even there to dissolve. That's what's amazing. So we often speak about, we hear about the observer and the observed. But really, when we let go of that separation of there's a subject and there's an object, that illusion itself, we realize that we're simply observation itself. You are observation itself. So then we look at the derivative words that are used. We talk about observation and observance. And you can look at the Latin shared roots of that. They both come from the word observare, observare, which is to watch, to carefully attend, to respect, to honor. So originally, and hear that, originally, these words sort of carried both meanings at the same time. Observation meant watching attentively, right? Observance came to mean honoring what had been seen. In other words, you could think of it as two phases of the same movement, an elegant overlap. And with that, there were different ways that it could be described. Observation is seeing clearly. Observance is being in alignment, let's say, being in alignment with what has been seen. That could be the earlier, purer ways of talking about this, okay? That could be the earlier, purer ways of talking about that. Observance may have been being in alignment with. Okay? Let me find where I put that for a moment. Okay, and see if I can even locate that. Okay, let's try it this way. So being in alignment with that is sort of an interesting concept. But is that the way that we actually use this today? Not really quite, is it? Not really quite. Observation, seeing clearly, observance being in alignment with, observance, observation revealing truth, observance honoring truth. Okay? That's sort of what we would like things to be. Is it always exactly that way? Not quite so sure. Okay? Not quite so sure about that. Observation notices what is present. Observance is to respect what is present. One is awareness, one is alignment. Is that, however, the way it's always presented to us, or subliminally even thought of? Optimally, it would be that there's an elegant bridge between the two, observation becoming observance, when what we see allows ourselves to shape how it lives. Observation discovers. Observance at its highest embodies. Now, why do I say at its highest? Because sometimes, often, observance becomes a little bit pressured or twisted into requiring us to follow a certain way of doing it. It's not the actual meaning of observance. Observation is simply seeing what is happening. Observance, in its purity, is allowing your life to fall into harmony with what you've seen. But sometimes the purity of that word becomes twisted and is used to pressure a conformance of behavior. Okay? Are you observant? Often is a question that says, are you following the rules? That is a little bit different, isn't it? Just a little bit different. The words observance and observation both relate to noticing. Okay? They do. And there's some overlap. Observation means noticing or perceiving something carefully, seeing or becoming aware of something. We have scientific observation, observation of behavior, observing the sky, observing what is happening in a room. Observing without judgment is at a very high level. Observing without predisposed thought is what's strived toward in science. When science speaks of the skeptic, they're not talking about someone who is adamantly against anything. Science is speaking of someone who has no opinion one way or the other. Okay? We strive towards learning to observe neutrally. Observance, there's religious observance, observance of a holiday, ceremonial observance. See, it starts to become flavored. And I understand this. And I think that this is I did notice that there was someone in the request box. And hopefully to talk about that, here you are. Is it Marcia? Is it Marcia? Tell me your name. Hi. Are you Marcia? Are you Marcia?
Hello,
Hello.
hello, Eric. Tudo
How
bem
are
com
you?
você?
Ah,
Saudade. I don't speak English.
I know. You speak Portuguese, right?
Oh, saudades de vocês.
Okay.
Muita.
Noita. It's very lovely to see you. Well, I would
Bye.
love to talk with you, but we can't. So, all right. Bye bye. But we could communicate with your smile. Bye bye. Observation. What a perfect example. Marcia's smile allowed the observation of a presence, of a love, of a being. There was a communication. It wasn't observance in the sense of following a rule, but yet allowing our lives to, or even our moments, to align with that feeling of love that came through her eyes and her smile, that is observance, not the roles. Observance. This is who we are. I had scribbled down many different ways of viewing this, but really, we've got the concept. Okay? We have the concept. One philosophical interpretation before we move forward from this is observation is awareness noticing something. Realization is when understanding dawns. And observance is when life begins to align naturally with what has been seen. I really like that. I like it so much that I'm going to highlight it so I can look at it for myself later. um, in healing, thank you for translating. She said, greetings to all of you. Thank you, Maybelline. And thank you, Marcia. In healing, observation and observance really are different petals of the same flower. It's not the lower meaning of following the rules. Observation without judgment means, are we willing to be present and be in observation? It doesn't mean we need to be in the same room. Sure. I can be facilitating a healing for someone and physically observing them because I'm in the same room. You can be observing me in this picture here on the Instagram Live. We were able to observe Marcia and to observe without judgment. And yet the smile, the love, the joy from the inside raised us or brought us to a different petal of the flower, which is the observance petal. Simply finding ourselves flowing in alignment with that. That's really the beauty of who we are as we allow ourselves to walk through life, to see nature all around us, to feel the joy in someone's smile or their eyes opening with pleasure. Observation opens the door. Observance gives us the choice of turning it into a role which closes a door, or allowing us to be in alignment with us, which gives us entrance through that doorway. In the spirit of healing, observation and therefore observance is the natural result of, I might even view it as the reward of presence, another way of sharing what presence is, because it's not two different things. It's not that one is the result of another, is that it's all one. It's not that the front of the coin is the result of there being the back of the coin. It's that they're one. Observation allows us to see what is true. And observance is letting go of anything that's in resistance to it. When resistance arises, It's because it's not the truth of who we are. When resistance arises, it's because it's not the truth of who we are. Observance, the way it's used on a human level, often attempts to force us into a compliance. And our nature is freedom. So when compliance is imposed upon freedom, there's a resistance. In healing, there is only freedom. The shoulds, the shouldn'ts vanish. The fears, the questions vanish. Resistance vanishes. It's not only that this happens in healing or during healing, which again makes it look like it makes it look as if there's a connection between the two, but they're not two. There's not a connection between the two. It doesn't disappear during healing. Healing is the disappearance of it, and the disappearance of it is healing. Svalbard says, where is this personal for you? Good question. It's become personal for me when the healings first showed up. There was no expectation or shoulds or shouldn'ts around it. There it was. It burst through with the freedom that it is. As my human personality wanted to know more about it in an attempt to improve it, it started to lessen. It started to move further away, almost as if it were disappearing. Because the intent to improve implies that something is less than. For me, it implied that it was less than. I wanted to make it more than. I wanted to make it better, to force it to be better, to find the way to do it better. And I went out learning the lesson, what's being taught. Do this, not that. Do that, not this. Not realizing that the attempt to make something more creates a false reality of something being less, including me being less. So why did I want to make it more? Probably so I could feel that I was more. The separate self, the I, the ego, the illusion of me was more. And I wanted to make the healings more and better. I think that's a big reason that a lot of us go out seeking, maybe why I did anyway, to learn healing. Because we think of it as something external. I thought of healing as something I needed to improve instead of realizing that it was me and I am 100% perfect. And therefore, so is the healing. Observation sees what is true. Observance began when I stopped resisting it. This is very key. This is very important. This brings us back to where we began. A cure is a medical event. A healing is a miracle, and a miracle is a holy event. We are not speaking of religion. I am not speaking of religion. I'm speaking of what is before the rules have been put in place upon it to make some of us feel more right than others. Oh, this is very good. Svalbard wrote, so there are two kinds of more than. One is the personality becoming more, and the impossibility of the true self being more, because the true self always is full. It can't be more. So what healing is, is the revealing of what is already present. Excellent. The revealing of what is already there. So healing doesn't suddenly come. Healing already is. But when we allow ourselves to, or when we don't allow ourselves to see it, we begin to hide it. And when we allow ourselves to be in presence, it reveals itself. The healing that we are looking for is already existing, and we already know it. So the example listed here in the note saying, but if I want to be more muscular, I need to do more weightlifting. And yet this is temporary. It's finite. It is not of our infinite being. You know? Healing is the infinite of who we are. And when we feel that we need a healing, it's just because we've turned away from that light and we're not seeing it. The healing is allowing ourselves to see ourselves once more. This is something to explore from within. Words don't do it justice. Words shine a light, allowing us to explore. It's just a light, allowing us to explore. Sometimes we think we want to hear something, we want to get the information, memorize it, use it, harness it. Maybe the healing is our willingness to simply question and explore in not knowing. Instead of walking home with a new set of rules from a conversation that we had, finding that we have the ever unfolding exploration going on within us. That's key. Follow me. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Allowing myself to believe in myself. That is the same thing that all the greats recognized and followed. And I do believe, as Kevin said, we need to listen to this, to explore this, hear it, to even hear it within ourselves as many times as we need. I need to hear it within myself as many times as I need to accept it. Svalbard writes, the infinite cannot reflect, but the finite is a temporary experience of the infinite. This is a lot. If we think we're going to understand this with our minds, I think I'm going to understand this with my mind fully, I'm going to be quite surprised. My mind allows me to explore it, but the exploration is the healing, is the gift. Are we comfortable in exploration? Are we comfortable in exploration? Thank you for going on this exploration with me this morning. I will be continuing to think about this, to explore it, and see what light it brings me. I'm sure some of you will do the same. Lexi writes, the infinite does not need reflection because it already contains everything. Well, the finite part of me is looking to explore the infinite. Let me see what comes up for me next week and we'll talk about it. But I actually have something very interesting and exciting to share with you next week. Already planned. Aha. How do you like that? So looking forward to speaking with you then. Kate from the Okanagan says, so if you're speaking with someone who is going through a major health issue and understandably is anxious, and this is outside of a reconnective healing concept, what could you say to help them? Very interesting, because I'd have to explore what your meaning, your intended meaning is outside of a reconnective healing concept. Someone who's going through a major health issue and is understandably anxious. You know, Kate from the Okanagan, a very interesting question. Probably one that's better discussed starting at the beginning of our Instagram Live. Another time than when we're already 1 minute past closing time. Thank you for the question. And maybe we'll talk about that next time if you like. Okay. Bye, everyone. For now, thank you very much. We'll see you in about 30 minutes for our Solomon Speaks group. And we'll see you all again here next week, same time, same place. Lots of love. Bye for now.